Good evening, Robert Scribbler. It is August 7th, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. Now, for this set, what we're going to do is look at an Arctic sea ice volume update by PIOMAS. But before we do that, I'd like to just take a general look at the Arctic sea ice as it appears on August 6th and during recent days from the satellite, the polar satellite imagery directly above the North Pole. And we can see quite a number of large open expanses of water surrounding the Arctic sea ice, as well as very weak and diffuse ice in the East Siberian Sea and the Beaufort Sea. And I'd like to call your attention to a photograph from one researcher, Julian Strova, who was recently in the region of the Beaufort Sea taking some pictures of sea ice remnants in the 73 degree north, 168 degree west region of the Beaufort Sea. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that region so we can get a look of the satellite shot to get an idea of how diffuse the ice is becoming in this region. So where my cursor is, let's see, right about now is the region that Julian was exploring, and we can certainly see some cloud cover here, but through the clouds we can see some remnant pieces of ice floating around. I'm going to go ahead and move the frame a bit so we can drill down, hopefully see some clear skies. There we go. So this region here, Julian Strova, an Arctic researcher, plumbing the sea ice melt for August of 2018. And just looking at these majestic, if haunting, satellite shots by NASA in our world that is presently being so radically changed by the continued burning of fossil fuels. So just a few things to look at and contemplate before we start to go into some of the science, some of the observations that are presently being undertaken by PIOMAS. Now, PIOMAS is an organization that is the Polar Science Center, and PIOMAS itself produces a monthly measure of Arctic sea ice volume and Arctic sea ice thickness. This is based on both observation and model summaries. Since this is a model, it does have some error bars, but overall has been pretty accurate. Presently, according to PIOMAS, Arctic sea ice volume is in the range of 5th to 6th lowest on record. It appears to be just edging out 2016 as the fifth lowest on record for the month of July. Now, these readings by PIOMAS are backdated, so it only continues through mid-July. We don't have present dating for Arctic sea ice volume, but on the present trajectory, as of mid-July, it appears that Arctic sea ice volume was approximately 5th lowest on record at about, let's see, looks like around 7,500 cubic kilometers. Now, sea ice volume measures both the extent and the depth of sea ice, so you get a total idea of all of the sea ice in all three dimensions. So by many, it's considered to be a key measure. Also, average daily sea ice thickness, according to PIOMAS, appears to be in the range of about, let's see, 6th to 7th lowest on record. And recently, sea ice has tended to concentrate as high pressure systems have tended to dominate in the central Arctic. So this will tend to boost sea ice thickness even as extent values have tended to plummet, and that's what we've seen. Now, overall, the trend line for sea ice volume continues on a loss of about 3,100 cubic kilometers per decade. So this is a pretty precipitous and consistent trend line, although during recent years we've seen some relatively strong dips below the trend line. This trend line has tended to hold. There was some concern during the 2012 period that the trend line would curve, but it appears to be pretty solid. Notably, this loss rate would put us into a range of near ice-free Arctics if we saw another comparable record low year to 2012 during the decade of the 2020s. It appears that we would be in a range of a near ice-free Arctic sometime during the 2020s if that trend line held. Now, under present climate conditions, it does appear that we are somewhat of a risk of an ice-free Arctic during any year if the weather lines up in a very difficult fashion for sea ice. However, during the present year, it does not appear that we are on a trajectory to experience record low sea ice. Unfortunately, with human-caused climate change, there have been a number of surprises, and that's one of the reasons why we pay attention both to the visual and to the quantitative monitors, PIOMAS being one of the more important ones. So that's a summary for Arctic sea ice volume. About 5th to 6th lowest on record for the middle of July. And presently, the trend line does appear to be holding the multi-decadal trend line. So something to keep track of here. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you soon.